Hey guys, my name is Jonah. I wanted to make this video so I could not show off per se, but I wanted to explain some of my camera options that I have for my live streaming, and basically give people an idea of what sort of options that they have available to them. I wanted to start off with the top left one. That is actually going to be a Raspberry Pi with one of the HQ camera sensors. This lens right here, the varifocal lens, and my more expensive setup on the top right, which would be my Lumix G7, the 25mm 1.7 lens, and the Camlink 4K. Now, the most expensive ones, obviously, it's going to be the G7. That ran, I made a list here on Amazon, and after taxes, it's about $110, $810.66. And the Raspberry Pi setup actually ended up being $186.14 to buy everything brand new. Now, I recommend the Raspberry Pi 4 2GB model because the extra RAM's not really going to help you in this case. You're just using this as a webcam, basically. Now, I've actually tried using the Raspberry Pi as a webcam in a few different ways. I've used the UVC gadget method. I've used the IP camera method. If you guys don't know, you can use the Raspberry Pi as a USB-C camera using its USB-C port. That's limited to USB 2.0, unfortunately. So the best you'd be able to get is 1080p 30 FPS. However, some of the development there by people like Jeff Geerling, for example, that's pretty much locked to using like an old firmware, and as you can tell, the autofocus here on the G7 isn't great, and the bottom one here is actually going in and out, and I'll go ahead and explain that one in a second. But yeah, the development for using the Raspberry Pi as a webcam, it's got some issues. Really the only Pi where I would say it's close to perfect would be the Raspberry Pi Zero, and that's not going to give you a lot of options in terms of image quality. You're not necessarily unlocking like the full potential that you could get from the HQ camera sensor, because on the Raspberry Pi Zero, if you don't want dropped frames, you're gonna have to use 720p 30 FPS. You can bump that up to 1080p, but you are gonna get some choppiness. I've tested it myself. However, that's not what I'm doing here. I'm not using now the Jeff Geerling method that I just described uses UVC gadget. There's also another one called Show Me Webcam that's similar. But what I'm actually doing here is I'm using a $20 HDMI capture USB device to essentially capture my stream, and I actually have Raspbivid's preview pulled up full screen at 1080p. So this is actually, let me see. It's gonna be, yep, it's this one right here. It's gonna be that one. The reason I recommend this and not like the Elgato is because you're wasting money. The best quality you're gonna get out of the Raspberry Pi is gonna be 1080p 30 FPS, and that's because that's kind of where it's at right now with the HQ sensor. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to get now let me go back a bit. The sensor on paper should be able to do 4K 30 FPS. However, that's if you have That's if you have all four of its lanes available, which you don't actually on the HQ camera sensor, the Raspberry Pi one. You're limited to 2 lanes, so the best you're going to get is 1080p 30 FPS. Now I believe I've seen an option from Droidcam where they actually have one where you can access all 4 lanes, so it does do the 4K 30 FPS. I don't know if it's compatible with the Raspberry Pi. I believe it's for the Jetson Nano, which at some point I'd like to go ahead and play around with that one. But this is the capture card I'm using for the Raspberry Pi, and the lens that I was showing off earlier, that's the lens I'm currently using with it, because you can change the focal length on it. Now all of this is going to be manual. On the Raspberry Pi, it's all manual. The how much light it gets in, like, you'll be able to control that manually. The focus, now that can either be a good thing or a bad thing. If you don't, oh, that's right. Okay, so it just went out. That's not a problem with any of the hardware. That's actually, I have the preview pulled up on RaspberryVid, and I didn't turn off like the sleep. Like I can turn off the sleep function on the Raspberry Pi, but I just didn't for this example. I just whipped up a new image of Raspberry Pi OS and threw it in there. I didn't mess much with the settings. But anyways, yeah, if you do this, just remember to turn off the sleep. But I lost my train of thought. Right. So with the Raspberry Pi option, you're gonna have to set everything manually, which it can either be a good thing or a bad thing. If you move around a lot, like say if you get up a lot and you're grabbing something from the back, it's not gonna stay on focus. Because you have to change it manually. But if you're just at your desk, you're like just live streaming like I do, you don't need to worry about it focusing or not. Yeah, so that's a thing. I don't worry about the fact that it's manual focus, because again, I'm not moving around a lot. But yeah, no, that's the Raspberry Pi option. Like I said, with the Panasonic G7, that's gonna be the most expensive, $810. You're gonna require the 25mm lens is the one I would recommend. I wouldn't go with the stock one. I would just buy the body and then the 25mm lens, because I mean, if you're already spending this much money, get the good lens. With the Raspberry Pi option though, this is honestly, if you don't have mirrorless camera money, if you only have like Logitech Brio money, get the Raspberry Pi instead. Heavily recommend it. Yeah, the Brio can do 4K at 30 FPS. It's a webcam though. It sucks. The lens on it sucks hard. It's not worth it. Do this instead, because first of all, you're not going to be able to stream to your audience at 4K anyway. Like, even though I got the G7, I still do 1080p 60 FPS, and even then, when I'm outputting on a stream, I lower that down to 720p. Really, the 1080p is only for the recordings. But yeah, no, that's going to be my recommendation there. Now, the last option. Maybe all you have is your phone. Maybe you want to use that as your webcam. Well, that's going to be the bottom left, right over there, and that general area. So yeah, obviously you can't change the focal length. It keeps going in and out. There's a couple of reasons for that. It might be my camera cable. It might be my cable, but I've actually, when it was the only camera that was active, I've actually seen it still go in and out. So obviously the app's not perfect, but it is free. I believe it might be like a bandwidth issue or a power issue. I have this connected to a USB hub with a few other devices, so it could just be, again, like a bandwidth issue with the USB cable, or it could just be a bad USB cable. But if you don't have any money and all you have is your phone and you want to use a free app, right there, Droidcam OBS. I would recommend it. I would recommend actually paying like the extra $4, $5, or $6 to turn off the watermark. I mean, it's just a few bucks, and you're going to be using this to live stream anyway. I consider buying the unlocking, like, basically like the full version. Even though I believe you actually unlock all the features from the get-go. I believe it might lock you out of the 1080p resolution if you don't pay for it, but I recommend paying the money. It's like $5. But yeah, no, I mean, you can see, like, you can see, like, side by side here, what the quality looks like. I mean, I personally, I don't like the, I don't like how the lighting makes me look on the Droidcam OBS app. But it's free, or it's $5 if you wanna take off the watermark. The thing about the G7 also is that it does those autofocus issues. They're very they can be very annoying. Like when you spend that much money, you don't want to have any issues at all. You want everything to work perfectly. But that unfortunately that's not the case unless you actually go with EPOS Vox's recommendation for this sort of setup, and use like a Sony Alpha, like a 5100. That's gonna get you 1080p 60 FPS, not 4K like the G7. I have the G7 because I do 4K video recordings. I don't just use it for live streaming, so it saves me money either way. But if you're just going to be doing live streaming, I recommend the 5100 as well. And also, you gotta these connectivity issues with the Droidcam OBS thing. It's using a USB cable, so this should not be happening. But it could just be a bad cable. But I say try it out for yourself, and yeah. So you can actually see over here my Raspberry Pi finished with the live preview. You can actually write a script, which I'll go ahead and make a video explaining how to set up your Raspberry Pi to do this. And you can write a script that'll it'll auto launch the preview on startup, and it can make it go indefinitely. I just had mine timed for other testing purposes. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. So top left corner, we have the Raspberry Pi with the high quality camera sensor. Top right is going to be the G7, and the bottom left is going to be the Droidcam OBS using it's actually a Razer phone too, in case you guys were curious. But that's pretty much it, guys. Whatever you guys decide, just remember that the best camera for live streaming is going to be the one that you have. If you want to spend money to up that quality, absolutely. If you have it, absolutely go ahead and do it. But if all you have is your phone in your pocket and you can't afford anything else, you're going to be fine. As long as your content's good, you're going to be fine.